atmosphere, as depicted here, or as prescribed in revealed scriptures by temple worship and household deity worship, then, in spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advancement in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. At the present moment, modern civilization is too much attached to the material way of life or sense gratification. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement can give the people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in the life of sense enjoyment. In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now, this is a really very, very, let's say, very, very fascinating purport. And Prabhupada is working on this theme that even though one may still be attracted to material, say, pleasures, they can make spiritual advancement. And what is the difference between someone who's engaged in sense gratification and someone who is regulated in Krishna consciousness, which includes being enjoying a material life? Well, the difference is regulation. When one is regulated in devotional service, even though they might still be engaged in some sense gratification, it is not what you'd call something that they do all the time. It's something that is regulated. So let's read what explains that in this purport. It says, the kingly happiness of material enjoyment generally drags one to the lowest grade of life, namely degradation to animal life, because of unrestricted sense enjoyment. That's the key word, unrestricted sense enjoyment. But Swayambhuva Manu was considered as good as a saintly sage because the atmosphere created in his kingdom and home was completely Krishna conscious. The case is similar with the conditioned souls in general. They have come into this material life for sense gratification. But if they are able to create a Krishna conscious atmosphere as depicted here, or as prescribed in revealed scriptures by temple worship and household deity worship, then in spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advancement in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. At the present moment, modern civilization is too much attached to the material way of life or sense gratification. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement can give the people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in a life of sense enjoyment. All right, let me read that again. Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in a life of sense enjoyment. In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So let's understand what's being said here, because this is you could call it a revolutionary statement. Uh, it says here that Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in the life of sense enjoyment. In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Okay, and again, in a little bit earlier in this purport, it says that the case is similar with the conditioned souls in general. They have come into this material life for sense gratification. But if they are able to create a Krishna conscious atmosphere as depicted here, or as prescribed in revealed scriptures by temple worship and household deity worship, then in spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advancement in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. Okay. At present moment, modern civilization is too much attached to the material way of life or sense gratification. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement can give the people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in the life of sense enjoyment. In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Okay, so this is revolutionary. In other words, you can still be engaged in certain types of sense gratification, but as long as it's regulated, and as long as you have either deities in your house or you're going regularly to the temple every day for worship, and above all, you're chanting Hare Krishna, then even though there is sense gratification, you can be purified. Now, what does this mean exactly? I mean, let's see what he's saying here. Does it mean that you can engage in all kinds of sense gratification and chant Hare Krishna and it's okay? Not really. Not what that. It's not the meaning of this. The meaning of it is that if you are having sense gratification, it has to be regulated. It cannot be unregulated. You know, uh, and then therefore regulated means you have specific times and day that you're chanting Hare Krishna, you're hearing lectures, you're going to Sankirtan, or you're doing spiritual things. And other times in the day, you might be engaged in some kinds of sense gratification. But everything is regulated. The whole idea of being regulated on the basis of Krishna consciousness is very important. Most people in this world are unregulated. They'll eat, sleep, mate, and defend, but it can be at all hours of the day. But in Krishna consciousness, as long as one is regulated, even though there are periods of the day where they're engaged in sense gratification, uh, and the fact that they're chanting Hare Krishna, and they will be purified over time. So let me read this one more time because this is like uh, it's actually revolutionary. It says the kingly happiness of material enjoyment generally drags one to the lowest grade of life, namely degradation to animal life, because of unrestricted sense enjoyment. This is what is considered the no-no, this unrestricted sense gratification or sense enjoyment. But Swayambhuva Manu was considered as good as a saintly sage because the atmosphere created in his kingdom and home was completely Krishna conscious. The case is similar with the conditioned soul in general. They have come into this material life for sense gratification. But if they are able to create a Krishna conscious atmosphere, as depicted here or as prescribed in revealed scriptures, by temple worship and household deity worship, then, in spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advancement in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. That's a big, big statement. In other words, uh, if you create the atmosphere of Krishna consciousness, that means there's going to be chanting. There's going to be deity worship, and it's going to be prasadam, and so forth. So all those things are Krishna conscious activities. Now, uh, as long as everything, the sense gratification is regulated, not engaging in sense gratification different times of the day and night and so forth. It's regulated, and there's regular chanting of Hare Krishna Mahamantra and hearing Shastra and so forth. Then one will gradually become more and more interested in Krishna consciousness than in sense gratification. So Prabhupada is not denying the fact that people can engage in sense gratification, but he's emphasizing that it must be regulated. If it's regulated, then it's possibility that, let's say, at the present moment, one is 25% Krishna conscious or 50% Krishna conscious and 50% sense gratified. Well, okay, that's regulation. Right? If one is gratifying their senses any time of the day or night, that's not regulation. But if they're only engaged in sense gratification, half the day, and the other half of the day they're engaged in Krishna consciousness, well, that's a step forward. And one can make spiritual advancement. And eventually, instead of being 50-50, because it becomes, like 70-30, and eventually it could become, 90-10. And eventually it becomes 100% Krishna conscious. So, but if they are able to create a Krishna conscious atmosphere, as depicted here or as prescribed in revealed scriptures by temple worship and household deity worship, then in spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advancement in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. That's an amazing statement that Prabhupada is making. At the present moment, modern civilization is too much attached to the material way of life or sense gratification. So, material way of life is there's no regulation. It's just sense gratify any time of the day. And they don't have an atmosphere of Krishna consciousness in their home. There's no deity, There's no waking up early. There's no this. There's no that. It says, therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement can give the people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. The Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in the life of sense enjoyment. So as long as there is deity, there is chanting of Hare Krishna, there is prasadam, even though there might be periods of the day when there's sense gratification, still the devotee can make spiritual progress, and eventually the let's say taste for sense gratification will be what you would call dovetailed completely into Krishna consciousness. And now the devotee is completely, let's say, engaged in Krishna's service. So it's a gradual process. It's not overnight. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement can give the people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in the life of sense enjoyment. So, what is that regulation? Waking up early, taking bath, dancing around, coming to the class, uh, and eating only prasadam and so forth. There's so many different things that are regulated that are Krishna conscious. And now, in this Krishna conscious atmosphere, one may still be engaged in some sense gratification, but that's not condemned. And therefore, it says, at the present moment, modern civilization is too much attached to the material way of life or sense gratification. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement can give the people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in the life of sense enjoyment. In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So if someone begins to chant Hare Krishna, stops eating meat, stops drinking, alcohol, things like that, and stops, going to prostitutes or whatever, and they become regulated in their habits, daily habits, they can be Krishna conscious, even though they're still engaged in sense gratification. But the sense gratification also is regulated. That's the main thing. This is regulation. That's what differentiates a devotee from a karmi. Now, there might be persons like there are materialistic people that are regulated also, you know, but it's somewhat what you'd say. Uh, it's not uh, uh, it's not strict regulation, but there are people that'll wake up 5 o'clock in the morning and then they'll take a walk every day, right? So that's a type of regulation also. But they're not necessarily chanting Hare Krishna and they're not eating prasadam and so forth, but they're regulated and it's good for their health. Let's put it like that. It might not be actually Krishna conscious. But on the other hand, if there's a person who's regulated and chanting Hare Krishna, even though they might still be engaged in some sense gratification, that can be, let's say, tolerated, and with the understanding that the person is going to make gradual spiritual advancement because of the regulation. So that's the main point: is learning to become regulated. That's why Prabhupada says here, Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in the life of sense enjoyment. See that? Regulates their life in the regulates their habits in the life of sense enjoyment. In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the chanting is the thing that is emphasized here. And regulation of one's activities is emphasized also. Now, there might still be material sense gratification and enjoying the material advantages, etc. But still, one can be liberated by the practice of Krishna consciousness, by being regulated and chanting Hare Krishna. This is this is what you would say. This is like revolutionary. Uh, it's something that is unique, and it is something that everyone is capable of doing. And they still have some, let's say, ability to engage in sense gratification. But as long as it's regulated, it can be gradually given up because once one gets the taste for chanting Hare Krishna and being regulated, waking up early, chanting, coming to the temple, worshiping the deity, little by little, they lose the taste for sense gratification because now they have a higher taste that is engagement in Krishna consciousness, chanting, dancing, and hearing lectures and so forth. Now, I mean, what Prabhupada is saying here is amazing. It just shows how he has a pure heart and is able to convince people to take up Krishna consciousness, even though they're still attached to sense gratification. And Lord, when you have people who are what you would call, uh, you know, uh, they are overly, uh, um, what's the word? They're um, fanatics. The fanatics, they only see uh, things one way, and if you're not that one way, then you're rejected. And Prabhupada wasn't like that. He understood what it's like to be married, to have material desires, but at the same time wanting to be Krishna conscious. So he was not a fanatic, but he was regulated. That's the whole point. Getting up, or going to bed early, waking up early, bathing, and chanting, and things like that, uh, and especially chanting Hare Krishna. Then there's great hope to make tangible spiritual progress. And that regulation is the mark of that, let's say, uh, passage from the world of sense gratification to the spiritual world. So even the sense gratification has to be regulated. And then eventually, but because one is chanting Hare Krishna and eating prasadam and so forth, the percentage of sense gratification will gradually decrease until it's zero. There's always going to be sense gratification. Like even if you eat prasadam, that's type of sense gratification, right? But it's in Krishna consciousness because it's been offered to Krishna, and now you're, enjoying the prasadam, right? So you're pleasing your senses, but it's done in a Krishna conscious way, and it's regulated, right? People get sick by being unregulated. It's a major cause of sickness. They eat at different times, they sleep at different times, they bathe at different times, they do all different things at different times. That lack of regulation will make you sick. But if you're regulated, and there was this one man I knew, every day he would weigh the amount of food he would eat. So he had a thing to weigh the food. So he'd put it on, make sure it was only a certain amount of food, and that's what he would eat. He wouldn't eat more than that. So he was regulated. He wasn't a devotee or anything like that, but at least he was regulated. He knew that if he was regulated, he'd feel better, and he would act better, throughout the day. So regulation is very important in spiritual life. Uh, so with the regulation, if you add on chanting Hare Krishna, then even though there's periods of sense gratification, which is also regulated, it can be tolerated for some time. And eventually, one will give up the sense gratification, Why? Because you develop such a taste for Krishna consciousness that you don't want to sense gratify anymore. Or you gratify only in Krishna consciousness, like taking nice prasadam and chanting nicely, dancing nicely, having festivals and things like that. Okay, so at the present moment, modern civilization is too much attached to the material way of life or sense gratification. Therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement can give the people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. Krishna consciousness does not stop them in their propensity for material enjoyment, but simply regulates their habits in the life of sense enjoyment. In spite of their enjoying the material advantages, they can be liberated in this very life by practicing Krishna consciousness by the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare. Yeah, this should be printed out on a big, uh, uh, piece of paper and put in the temple uh, to see how liberal Prabhupada is, and at the same time, very spiritually, savvy. He can see how to help people make spiritual, tangible advancement. At the same time, having some regulated sense gratification. The main thing is it has to be regulated. Everything has to be regulated. The time you eat, the time you sleep, the time for this, the time for that. Okay. Yes.
From which line that you used to drink it, like starting which line?
It says in the purport, therefore, the Krishna consciousness movement can give the people in general the best opportunity to utilize their human life in the midst of material enjoyment. Krishna consciousness, you see that?
Yes, ma'am. So from the therefore.
Therefore, yeah.
Yes, till the end of the book.
Yes. Okay. Haribol. Are there any other questions? This is something we should discuss. It is very interesting. You see how Prabhupada is, in one sense, liberal, but in another sense, very strict.
Maharaj,
Yeah.
here the material happiness. So what are the specific things that are considered as a material happiness that Swayambhu Manu? Like having kingly life, jewelry,
Material
expensive clothes.
enjoyment. Material enjoyment. In this way, one second, let's see. It's the first sentence. The kingly happiness of material enjoyment generally drags one to the lowest grade of life, namely degradation to animal life, because of unrestricted sense enjoyment. Unrestricted.
Mhm.
But Swayambhu Vamana was considered as good as a saintly sage because the atmosphere created in his kingdom and home was completely Krishna conscious. The case is similar with the conditioned soul in general. They have come into this material life for sense gratification. But if they are able to create a Krishna conscious atmosphere, as depicted here or as prescribed in revealed scriptures, by temple worship and household deity worship, then in spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advancement in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. So, if you start household deity worship or regular temple worship, and same time, you may still have some tendency for sense gratification, but because you're regulated in Krishna consciousness, at a certain point, you will give up the sense gratification and just have complete Krishna consciousness in your life. So there's a, transition period, right? And that transition period might be very long, might not just be, 1 or 2 weeks or through a couple of months. It could be, years. But during all those years, you're chanting Hare Krishna. That's the main thing. The chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And gradually, you can make spiritual advancement.
Another interesting thing that I observed, Maharaj, is in the word translation, the Yoga Maya so was translated as the in temporary enjoyment
Where is that?
in the word to word.
Oh, word to word. Oh,
Yeah, Yoga Maya was translated here as the temporary enjoyment.
Yeah, Yoga Maya Su. In temporary enjoyment. So let's see what it says. Although absorbed in material happiness, I guess that's it in the verse. He was not dragged to the lowest grade of life, where he always enjoyed his material happiness in a Krishna conscious atmosphere. I mean, these are amazing statements by Prabhupada. Amazing statement.
We will not say anything like this anywhere else.
No.
Any other spiritual path.
No, exactly. It's just amazing. The way Prabhupada can present Krishna consciousness is otherworldly. Let's put it like that. Although absorbed, I mean, he's simply explaining things that are shastrically valid. Okay, so when you look at the big controversy, the hullabaloo controversy that some people made when Prabhupada said that, used the word, rape. He used the word rape. Some women like to be raped, he said. everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people, criticizing Prabhupada. He doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't know what it means, blah, blah, blah. He's a 19th century person, had different types of culture, and this word is completely not acceptable in the 20th century or 21st century. All nonsense criticism of Prabhupada. You know. So, but he did say this, women like to be raped. Now, what does that mean? Okay. So some uh, thug rapes a woman, she definitely doesn't like that. But if her husband is sexually aggressive, but without hurting her, but is loud, sexually aggressive, some women like that. They like that the fact that the husband is good at satisfying her sexual desires. So um, and and that might look like it's rape because he's uh, you know uh, sexually, let's say, adamant. Now, is that good? Well, that's not. It's not the best thing, but it can be tolerated, and gradually one can be weaned off of that. Let's say uh, lustiness. But some women like that. So, because they also have lusty desires. But eventually, it'll go away if one is regulated. That's the whole point. The point is regulated. Yes.
Rape is the past tense.
What?
Yeah.
Rape is the past tense, past participle of the word rape, of the verb rape. Rape is defined as unlawful sexual activity, usually sexual intercourse that is carried out against a person's will or with someone who is unable to give consent.
Okay. Uh, However, uh, it can be used also in a more, let's say, general way that the tendency of a man to be, let's say, sexually, uh, you know, sexually, call that word, sexually habituated, uh, can be considered in certain circumstances as rape. But uh, there are women that like the aggressiveness of of a man. However, um, that's not normally rape is a bad thing, but some some women or consider it to be you know something that they want. Not that they're beaten up or they're forced, but they're seduced, uh, and in a way that they don't find it abusive. So that is a type of rape, but it's not the type where a man puts a knife to the throat of a woman and takes advantage of her. It's something that is what you would call um, done in a way where, although there is, let's say, a strong desire for sense gratification, it's not by tying up a woman with the rope.
Consensual.
There's yeah, there's definitely consensual, uh, uh, let's say, acceptance of the man's uh, uh, desires toward sense gratification. So there's a fine line. Let's put it like that. There's a fine line between uh, rape that is forced and is, let's say, criminal, and rape that is accepted and is uh, desired. Um, okay, I wrote a whole thing about this. Maybe I should find what I wrote and read it. There are women that they because the sex that they have is not satisfactory for them. So they'll get a divorce and marry someone who can satisfy their sexual uh, appetite also. So uh, there's a fine line between rape, which is forced and criminal, and aggressive sexuality that is acceptable and desired by a woman. Okay, so therefore it says here, but Swayambhuva Manu was considered as good as a saintly sage because the atmosphere created in his kingdom and home was completely Krishna conscious. That means there's always chanting of Hare Krishna going on. There's always festivals going on. There's always hearing regularly, morning and evening, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So that means that there's the atmosphere is Krishna conscious. And it says the case is similar with the conditioned soul in general. They have come into this material life for sense gratification. But if they are able to create a Krishna conscious atmosphere, as depicted here or as prescribed in revealed scriptures by temple worship and household deity worship, then in spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advancement in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. So, how do you create this environment of Krishna consciousness? Well, there's regulation. Going to sleep early, waking up early, chanting your rounds, and seeing the deity, and all these different things are regulated, and therefore you can make spiritual advancement, even though, and the sense gratification is also regulated. Okay, so it could be 50-50, 50% sense gratification, 50% spiritual activity. But eventually, if you continue and you are regularly hearing lectures and regularly, associating with advanced devotees, it could become, instead of 50-50, it could be 70-30. Eventually, it could become 90-10, and eventually it becomes 100% because you're making gradual advancement. And that's a natural thing in human life. You can't become a pure devotee overnight, but you can become a devotee overnight and engage in regulated spiritual activities. And eventually you become completely purified. But it all depends on the simple method of chanting the holy names of the Lord, Hare Krishna. Without Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, it won't work. You can be regulated and so forth, but without the Maha Mantra, it won't work. Because the Maha Mantra is the recommended way to make spiritual advancement in Kali Yuga. In other ages, there were different processes like meditation or very opulent deity worship or very, let's say, Anyway, very opulent deity worship and so forth. But in Kali Yuga, it's chanting Hare Krishna. And if there is regular chanting of Hare Krishna, even and that makes the atmosphere of Krishna conscious because you're hearing regularly every day the chanting of Hare Krishna, even though there's still maybe, let's say, attachment to sense gratification, gradually it'll go away if there's regulation in chanting and dancing and so forth. Okay, so let's see. We'll go on to the next verse, text 35. As freshly prepared food is very tasteful, but if kept for 3 hours or 4 hours, huh?
The translation.
35, yeah, I'm sorry. Consequently, although his duration of life gradually came to an end, his long life, consisting of a Manvantara era, was not spent in vain, since he ever engaged in hearing, contemplating, writing down, and chanting the pastimes of the Lord. Purport. As freshly prepared food is very tasteful, but if kept for 3 or 4 hours, becomes stale and tasteless. So the existence of material enjoyment can endure as long as life is fresh. But at the fag end of life, everything becomes tasteless and everything appears to be vain and painful. The life of Emperor Swayambhuva Manu, however, was not tasteless as he grew older. In his life, as he grew older, his life remained as fresh as in the beginning because of his continued Krishna consciousness. The life of a man in Krishna consciousness is always fresh. It is said that the sun rises in the morning and sets in the evening, and its business is to reduce the duration of everyone's life. But the sunrise and sunset cannot diminish the life of one who engages in Krishna consciousness. Swayambhuva Manu's life did not become stale after some time, for he engaged himself always in chanting about and meditating upon Lord Vishnu. He was yogi because he never wasted his time. It is especially mentioned here, Vishnu Kurvato Bruvata Kata. When he talked only of Krishna and Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. When he heard something, it was about Krishna. When he meditated, it was upon Krishna and his activities. It is stated that his life was very long, 71 yugas. One yuga is completed in 4,320,000 years. 71 of such yugas is the duration of the life of Manu, and 14 such Manus come and go in one day of Brahma. For the entire duration of his life, 4,320,000 years times 71, 4,320,000 times 71 years, Manu engaged in Krishna consciousness by chanting, hearing, talking about, and meditating upon Krishna. Therefore, his life was not wasted, nor did it become stale. Okay, so chanting, hearing, talking, and meditating upon Krishna in a regulated way, even though there may be sense gratification, one makes tangible spiritual advancement as considered a genuine devotee. Okay, so are there any questions or discussion about this?
There's one
Yeah, yes.
question thought came to me is we're talking here about the Swayambhuva Manu, but I think we currently have a one Manu, one Manu. Like how do we conduct
Seventh Manu, right?
seventh Manu? So when we think of
Vivaswata
How do
Manus.
we contemplate the Manu existence contemporary to our existence?
Like in terms of the lifetime.
Is it in terms of the lifetime? Is it like so the current Manu is existing with us, right? How do we contemplate? How do we understand the concept of Manu here?
Yeah, because in eternity there's many years.
Manu, is
Like
that right?
currently there is one Manu who's, because we live like a very tiny speck of the
Yes, 70
Yeah.
years.
maybe 70 to 100 years time. So this is like, so that means like we can only be within mostly one Manu's lifetime, right?
What is your question?
My question is, there is right now. I think there is an existing Manu.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's not here. He's not in.
He is not in the at least earthly planet. Is that how we should understand? He's currently in the celestial different planet. But when we're reading the Swayambhu Manu here in the Bhagavatam, are we referring to the Manu that was living on the planet Earth, or it's also similar to the current Manu?
So whether he existed.
What do you mean by current Manu? And the Manu is
There is only one Manu at any time.
No. His question is, did these pastimes happen on Earth?
Yeah.
When Swayambhu Manu was there, did these pastimes happen on Earth? Because right now also
There's a Manu.
there is a Manu, but we don't see him. So that doesn't mean like
that will be part of next Bhagavatam. It's not going to be. The Bhagavatam is not like a fixed.
well, wait a minute. There's a lot of things we don't see,
Yes.
but are existing. Like for example, you don't see the deity on the moon,
Yeah, we don't. Yes.
right? But yet, that deity is there. We don't see so many things, but they're existing in spite of the fact that we can't see it, because our seeing ability is very limited. So, and Manu and demigods, they used to regularly come to the Earth planet before it became so, let's say, degraded. And if people become more and more spiritually, let's say, enlivened, then the demigods will start coming back to the Earth on a regular basis. So everything depends on our consciousness and our regulation. So if someone is regulated in Krishna consciousness, then they will see things that most other people do not see, because their senses become purified. When your senses are contaminated, you don't see things correctly. When your senses are purified, then you begin to see things that you didn't see before. So okay, Manu is going to live 71 years times 4,320,000. That's huge lifespan, right? And Manu engaged in Krishna consciousness by chanting, hearing, talking about, and meditating upon Krishna. Therefore, his life was not wasted, nor did it become stale. So, therefore, if we, like Manu, engage in Krishna consciousness by chanting, hearing, talking about, and meditating upon Krishna, then our life is not wasted, nor does it become stale. Stale means that you get bored with it. So that's what we should do. Every day, we should chant, we should hear, and talk about and meditate about Krishna. Then your life will be transcendental. And because the soul is eternal, then even though you might, this present body will get old and sick and die, you don't die. And you'll get another body, another material body, or a spiritual body. It could be either way, either a material body or a spiritual body, and continue doing the same thing, chanting, hearing, talking meditating upon Krishna. Okay, so now it's 7:31. So if we don't have any other questions, we'll stop. Or if there is a question, we'll continue.
So I just found where Manu lives.
Oh, yeah.
The location is called Ramyaka Varsha, name of region situated in south of Meru and north of Sweta.
Okay, now we know where his home is.
There's one line in this purport. It says, "The life of a man in Krishna consciousness is always fresh."
What?
The life of a man in Krishna consciousness is always fresh.
Yeah,
Very-
definitely.
very cool.
The life of Emperor Swayambhuva Manu, however, was not tasteless. As he grew older, his life remained as fresh as in the beginning because of his continued Krishna consciousness. The life of a man in Krishna consciousness is always fresh. Yeah.
When body is getting old, it's not fresh, but the consciousness is fresh. Is that the correct understanding?
When you say the body is not fresh,
Because life remains as fresh, means life, but body will get old and it will eventually
well, yes and no, because if you're regulated, strictly regulated, then, even though you might be 70 years old, you still feel as if you were 20 years old. If you're not regulated, then you feel like you're 70 years old. So even the karmis, they know, if they get regulated and they're exercising and things like that, even though their body is 70 years old, they still feel like they're 20.
And like Prabhupada, he used to, like, whole night he used to, like in the morning walks he used to do.
Yeah, it's very regulated. He only slept 3 hours or 2 hours, and he was up all night, translating and writing. So you get excited, even Prabhupada talks about Napoleon. He said, Napoleon, he was so excited about conquering, he only slept 2 hours a day. Now, so you see, when you get excited and you're invigorated, you don't want to sleep because that sleeping is a waste of time. So you
They
diminish.
accomplish so many things.
Huh?
People in that spirit, they think that they can do a lot more
Yeah,
by staying awake.
and Napoleon, he would wake up, after sleeping only 2 or 3 hours, and then he'd about 20 different secretaries around him, and he'd say, "Okay, we'll do this, do that,
It's conquer.
conquer here, let's conquer there." He had 20 secretaries, surrounding him, and he'd be giving instructions to them. He was invigorated. He was excited about conquering.
About the material prospects.
Yes. Yeah. So we should get excited also, then you won't look forward to sleeping. You consider it, as something that is not necessary. Yeah, you can get, you can live on like 2 or 3 hours of sleep. That's it. But there are other examples, like, of course we can't imitate them, but who was it? It was chanting
Haridas Thakur.
300,000
Haridas.
Haridas Thakur. Yeah. He was awake 23 and a half hours a day, and a half hour for bathing and taking care of his body a little bit. And the rest of the time he was chanting.
So excited.
Yeah.
Super excited.
Yeah.
It's chanting, that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we should not be surprised at what the human body is capable of doing, but we cannot imitate, you know, people like Haridas Thakur. Okay, well, thank you very much. All glory to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Both the purports were very exciting.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Then, in spite of their material enjoyment, they can make advancement in pure Krishna consciousness without a doubt. That's an amazing statement, right?
Gives confidence that we can all practice.
Yeah. Everyone can become Krishna conscious. Even the worst person can become Krishna.
Uniqueness of Krishna consciousness.
Yeah. But based on regulation. That's the main thing.
And a lot of material successful people.
Regulation and chanting Hare Krishna. Go ahead.
Not just, yeah. A lot of material successful people, they are regulated.
Yeah.
Strict.
Morning, they wake up
Early mornings and they do their exercise or whatever is their schedule, but they are very fixed. I want to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. There was this one guy who was very, very regulated. He would weigh his food every day. He wouldn't eat more than 1 pound a day. And he has,
they also read all the labels, what is how much protein, how much.
Yeah.
You have exact measurement.
Haribol. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, where's the profile?